Let's get scratching.
We got an explosive broadcast coming to you. Listen up. Sega games, just keep playing them. Sega!
We're back. It's the SEGAbits Swingin Report Show. Get ready for Sega news and commentary with George and Barry. Hello and welcome to episode 76 of the SEGAbits Swingin Report Show. I'm Barry. With me is my co-host George.
No. That's all wrong. Co-host.
A co-host.
Main host.
Main host.
Well, you're the one who... Okay, let's just start.
All right. Well, let's just use that because it's different from the other 75 times we've done it. Joining us, we have a very special guest, Stealth, the co-developer of the Sonic the Hedgehog Remastered games, which includes 1 and 2. And you had also assisted on CD. However, was that not a co-development credit?
Right. I wasn't actually contracted on to do Sonic CD, but before the project was actually taken up, when he was making the pitch, he had asked me for some help to reverse engineer a few things so he could get it right for the pitch demo.
Okay, cool. Well, hey, thanks for coming on to talk with us a little bit about the project, first off. Let's see, to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about your first experience playing a Sonic the Hedgehog game, I guess going pre-development, just to see what kind of fan you were growing up?
Okay. The first time I saw it was when it was actually released in '91. I saw it on display at a Sam's Club. I had passed by it a few times before I actually got the chance to play it.
Oh, nice. Did you get it for like a holiday, like a Genesis, or?
It was a surprise. Just one day, my dad had brought in a Genesis with Sonic on it, and he actually told us that he had only rented it, but I ended up finding a Toys R Us bag which belonged to that. So
nice. Oh, that's good. I forgot the days of renting hardware. I rented an Xbox, and that was a weird experience. So what was it exactly about Sonic that, compared to other mascot platformers of the time, that really drew you to him? Was it the character, or was it more the gameplay, or a mix of both?
Probably mostly the gameplay. It just, when I first saw it, it looked amazing to me, and I just thought about how complex it must have been, so...
Oh, cool. Because
So,
I know... Oh, go on, George.
Oh, I was going to ask my question.
Oh, go for it.
Barry seems like I interrupted him and he's very angry at me. But
Nah, I'm not pissed off. No.
Like, when did you think I want to make a game like this, like Sonic the Hedgehog, or learn how they made that game work?
First I started with an NES a while back, and shortly after that, I started trying to get into video game programming, and I was targeting Mario 3 at the time. But once Sonic had come along, that changed my mind. I wanted to do Sonic from that point on.
All right, Barry, can you ask the next question? This is like your question. I don't really know.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the development of your early project metrics? And I also want to know what the challenges were of making it in C++.
Sure. Actually, it's made in C, with C++ actually being something different.
Okay.
Yeah, the vast majority of my code is actually just plain C. And let's see, Project Metrics was started in like 1997, I think. It was based on an engine I was already working on that I had started back in '95 with some other friends. We had actually started on trying to make a fan game that was going to be called Knuckles Last One Standing. And the original idea was to make it in click and play, but that didn't really work very well. So I just got out some books I already had and started trying to build some stuff in C for us. From there, that kind of didn't pan out, and I did a few more demos after that, and then I met up with someone named Ron Echidna, who was doing a game called Sonic and the Seven Rings, and eventually we moved that over to my engine, and eventually it was renamed to Project Metrics.
Cool. And since then, you've started Headcannon. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, Headcannon. That's the name I took once I decided to register a business when I was first going to contract with Sega for Sonic One.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool.
And
And so, yeah, and so did that, how did that tie in with, I guess, how did that tie in with you meeting Taxman and starting to work on some of the official Sega projects? Were you involved with the pitches at all?
not directly. Uh, yeah, Headcannon came along just shortly before the release of Sonic One, or the website did anyway. I had registered it. I had registered it previously so that I would have that in the talks with Sega. And back when Sonic CD was being worked on, I just didn't have a registered business or anything. And as far as that goes, Taxman had come to me to talk to me about something I had recently done, where I had had my engine, which was called EO2 at the time, ported to the PSP and the Wii. And I showed that off at Sage that year, and he wanted to tell me he was impressed by that, and also to ask me if I would be able to help him with the reverse engineering.
Oh, cool. And so I mean, despite none of the remakes actually used any of your your work, it was mainly working with the retro engine, which was completely Taxman, correct?
Yeah. So Taxman has built the retro engine himself. I haven't had any direct involvement with building the engine, and this is from a long while back, somewhere in the late '90s or so, also, where it started as Retro Sonic fan game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting. George, you had a question, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but I don't know if this question should be like directed, but I mean, you worked on the retro engine. I mean, you worked with the retro engine, so you know that like what's its limits. So like we've seen it used on Sonic where you have like a virtual D-pad, but would it support other types of touch control like an SRPG like Shining Force where you could tap where you want the character to go?
The way it works right now, I think it's built to have the virtual D-pad, but I'd say it should probably be pretty trivial to add a different touch interface to it, if like you were describing.
All right. The first game you guys did was Sonic CD. I mean, is there a reason why Taxman started with Sonic CD out of the trilogy, or the retro games, I guess?
Yeah, actually, he aside from just liking that game, he knew that the way they were bringing the games to mobile and other platforms, they weren't going to be able to do the same thing with Sonic CD, because it had always been emulation, and Sega CD emulation is much more difficult and much more process intense than just Genesis emulation alone. So the only way Sonic CD was going to show up on a platform like that would be if it were rebuilt from the ground up.
That's true. Yeah, I agree with that. I was gonna say, you guys actually added stuff to the retro re-releases. You guys added like boss modes, playable characters, and stuff. How hard was that for Taxman and you guys to like pitch to Sega and Sonic Team that you guys wanted to add stuff that they'd taken out previously?
There was some discussion about it. Like the characters, to begin with, we almost didn't get the characters because they were afraid that they were going to break the game, and we had a hard time explaining to them just how easy it would be to modify parts of the game so that the characters don't get into where they don't belong and break stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And did Sonic Team have a lot of involvement with the game, or like approving certain features?
Yeah, that's just about it. They what they saw out of what we were giving them, they told us what they thought was wrong, just basically another part of the QA process, and then anything that they wanted us to change about any of the stuff we wanted to add.
Did they give you like? I'm just wondering. This is just for my like what I'm thinking. Like, do they ever give you like positive feedback, or is it just change this, change that?
Yeah, it was pretty much that.
Yeah, okay, that's what I assumed. All right, Barry, you want to ask the next question?
Actually, just building off of that question you had about the additional characters. That's, obviously I've never developed a Sonic game, but in just looking at some of the recent titles, that have only are 2D and they only have Sonic playable, I can see how people would think that like Tails would fly off the stage, or at the very least you would have to develop every single stage to accommodate 3 characters, which, and this is just on your own personal opinion, would you say this is because doing so probably takes too much development time? Do you think it's, I don't want to use the word laziness, but do you think not including them is probably, I don't know, what are your thoughts on additional characters in the games, I guess is what I'm trying to talk about.
Well, when they finally dialed back the amount of characters that they had in their games and they went straight to Sonic, I thought that was just going a little overboard. And as far as designing the levels for the 3 characters, it does take a little more planning to build levels with multiple paths, and some of them are for some characters and not for the other characters. But I don't think that it would be so much that it's not worth trying.
Right. Yeah, especially with Knuckles, he can climb anywhere, so I'd assume any wall that he can climb would need to either have something stopping you or taking you to something, so there's a point to you climbing the wall rather than breaking the level. Or with Tails even, I feel like he's been kind of gimped the past few years. I was playing Runners today, and he's kind of he glides now. He almost glides like Knuckles, which is kind of strange.
Yeah, that's what they ended up doing with him in Boom too, which I was really disappointed with myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tails was the worst character in the 4 Boom. It was a terrible game, but that was just very terrible character. I didn't even know why he was in it.
He didn't. Yeah, he hovered. Yeah. I wanted to ask too, in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I think Remastered, the biggest thing that got people really excited was seeing the Hidden Palace Zone. How hard was that to piece together, and how much of it was based off of original ideas and how much of it was new?
Well, we first started with the level as it was in the prototype that we have. And by that one, I mean the one they call a Simon Way prototype. And from there, just tried to figure out what would actually make this level good and interesting. And that was pretty much the extent of what we got of the original content. Anything else that's there, the new layout, any of the new structures, the badniks and stuff, the boss, definitely. All of that is brand new stuff.
Interesting.
That's so like Sonic Team didn't like give you guys like planning documents or something that they never released so you guys could finish the level?
No.
Interesting. What was the I guess just an additional question about the content in that? What was there any what was the reasoning behind the pipe organ boss? Was that something one of you always wanted to do, or maybe was it something based on an old concept that was cut in the past?
That was actually Taxman's concept, and he said that it was something like a cathedral or something, which he thought fit into the palace theme.
Yeah, it was a really imaginative boss. I was surprised. It was pretty cool. It was pretty tough, too. Another question. Could you explain how much work goes into bringing these classics updated for new displays? And how do you guys get them to look and sound and play better than they did on Genesis hardware?
Well, one thing is that we have higher quality sound for one, and we also have greater processing power to make use of, and the rendering that we do also includes some the ability to rotate, scale, and make translucent the sprites, which you couldn't get on the Genesis.
Right. So is it difficult to preserve that kind of original feel despite the improved visuals?
Well, we kind of did have to make sure that we didn't go too overboard with anything. Just something that would look nice without distracting, really, from what was actually going on in the game.
Right. George?
Oh, I was wondering, how long does it take from starting development and the end of development of like a retro remaster title, and which title was the one that took the longest to make?
Out of the three of them, definitely it would be Sonic CD, particularly because it's just so much bigger than the other two games, and because I wasn't directly involved, so I couldn't help speed up the process.
Okay, so like how long does it take usually, like an average of making the retro remaster game from start to finish?
Let's see. Sonic 1 was maybe 3 months, and about twice that long for Sonic 2.
That's actually a lot shorter than I expected. I don't know. You guys work fast.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, well, let's talk about the campaign that's going on right now. When you and Sega guys, when you guys did a meeting, was there a focus to like release all the retro titles, or was it a game by game basis?
Well, what first happened was you probably know about the campaign Taxman had to get Sonic CD in the first place. He started out by showing a preview video privately to somebody from Sega Europe, but it was one of their PR people, so it didn't really go very much of anywhere before Sega brought out this post on their American blog saying, we are putting old games from the Genesis era on the iPod and iPhone. Which games do you want to see? So he decided at that point to publicize the video and let people know that this was an option, so they can tell Sega, we want Sonic CD.
And when you guys finally got the contract with CD and stuff, I mean, did Sega have like a clear focus on how many titles he wanted to do, or was it just, do Sonic CD and maybe we'll do another one later?
Yeah, it was pretty much like that. Sonic CD stood on its own at first because it was the first time they had ever worked with us, and they didn't know how well we could do, stuff like that. By the time Sonic CD was finished, we had been talking about doing more games in the series, and around the same time, Sega Japan wanted to put Sonic 1 on Android for the first time, which they hadn't put it there and emulated the same way they had on iOS, and we kind of got in on that to where we would do the remastered one for Android and also iOS at the same time. And
okay.
When that happened, this isn't how they wanted it to go, but everyone once Sonic 1 was announced at GDC when they were showing it off for the first time, the guy that was there screwed up and then also mentioned Sonic 2. So everybody knew that before Sonic 1 was even finished, everybody knew we were also going to do Sonic 2. And since that's out there, I might as well say we were asked to do Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 at the same time.
Okay, so that makes, so you guys were asked to do 1 and 2, but they never talked about 3, right?
Not very much. 3 wasn't put on the contract, and we just didn't have any real hard discussion about actually doing 3 at the time, so we just took what we had and did 1 and 2 first.
Okay. Barry? Yeah, you want to add on to that?
Actually, I wanted to ask about the talking about Sonic 3, the proof of concept video from YouTube last year. It made the rounds in the community. It became very popular. I'm just wondering, how complete was this proof of concept?
Pretty much exactly what you see in the video. I mean, it skips around a lot, but all of the stuff that gets shown in the video is absolutely complete. But anything that's not in the video as in other levels and stuff, that's not in the demo either.
Right. Hypothetically, how long do you think it would take to develop a Sonic 3 and Knuckles?
To be safe, I'd say about a year, maybe.
So it's definitely. I mean, it's a larger game than Sonic 1 or Sonic 2. So that 3-month window.
There's a whole lot more content there, and they did a lot more fancy stuff with it. So that kind of increases the amount of time you need to spend on it too.
That's very true with save states. How would the save states work? Would you do a Sonic 3? Would you maintain that kind of original settings, or would you do something more like the Sonic 1 and 2?
I'd imagine that probably the save menu would be converted to something more like 1 and 2, just for consistency.
Interesting. I just to mention too, I really like the changing the region changes the artwork of the cartridge. That was really cool. But anyway, one of the things I've been hearing rumors of is that the reason the game hasn't been remastered yet is due to legal issues with the music. Can you explain a little bit of this for the people not in the know and maybe squash some rumors?
Okay. It starts like a long time ago, somewhere shortly after Sonic 3 was released in the first place. People on the internet had started to hear that there was some strange issue going on with the music, and a lot of people made some assumptions based on which music was changed in the Sonic and Knuckles collection for PC. And let's see, I think that was released in like 96, and just somewhere between 2 and 4 months later, Sonic Jam was released, and Sonic Jam also happened to have all of the original music in it. And the interesting thing about that is when they remade Sonic and Knuckles collection for PC, it was a source port, so they could modify any of the stuff that they needed to, and they did when they changed those particular songs. But in Sonic Jam, it also actually was a source port and not an emulation or anything, so they could change the music there too, since it was stored as WAV files that were streamed from disk. But they did, in fact, use the original music there without a problem.
Interesting. So, because I know some people speculate that it has something to do with the type of emulation. Either it's a direct emulation, it's a remake, maybe there's some sort of legal way around it. So you're saying that despite this, Sonic Jam is basically no different from the PC release in terms of its how it's played on the Saturn, correct?
Yeah. What I said in the thread once about this is there may actually be some level of ability for them to release an emulation, as in they can sell as many Genesis cartridges as they want under the contract, assumedly. So it may be that either it was automatic or that they've come to some agreement where they can release emulations just as other physical cartridges, since it's the same game as is.
Yeah, I know other Sega games have come across that, and some people are even speculating it's the reason we haven't seen Shenmue HD yet. So it's music. I never, it's one of those things you don't really think about, but then there are these contracts they make with external artists. What was it? Dreams Come True, correct? There were some issues with them, I believe, weren't there?
Yeah, there was talk about there being a problem with using their music for Sonic Spinball, because when STI was developing Sonic Spinball, they used a few jingles from the original Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, and they were asked to change it right before the game was released because they didn't get approval from Dreams Come True. And something similar happened more recently, where when they wanted to reuse some of the music for some more recent games, they had to license it for Sonic Advance. When they had a few of those songs, they had to license it for for Sonic Generations. They had to license it for the recent soundtrack release, and then further, when they did some ports of Sonic Advance, those ports actually replaced the Sonic 1 and 2 music that they had with Sonic 4 music, because I guess they just didn't pick up a contract for that either.
That's interesting. I didn't know about that. I guess that explains why they have an internal sound team, so they don't have to deal with this sort of thing moving forward. George, you had some questions?
Oh yes, you guys are planning. Well, I'm assuming the proof of concept was to plan to bring Sonic 3 and Knuckles together as like one game, as it was supposed to be. And is there anything you guys were gonna add, like thinking of adding to the game?
Okay. As I mentioned in the blog post I made when we first released the video, we had a few ideas that we wanted to go with. One of them was an idea I had for an expanded Blue Spheres mode. It would be Blue Spheres 2 or something like that, which included two new spheres. The green sphere, which is a two-hit. You hit it once, it turns blue. You hit it again, and it turns red. And the pink sphere, which you touch the pink sphere, and it will teleport you randomly to another pink sphere somewhere in the layout.
Okay, and that was one of the ideas. Is there any other ideas you guys had, like another extra character? I mean, there's not that many characters.
There's not that many, no.
Oh yeah, people have been asking about getting characters in there. There's a lot of stuff they throw around. Some people say Amy. Some people say we're going to add the Chaotix. Some people say we're going to add Shadow. But yeah, I really don't think that that would happen at this point.
You didn't say Big the Cat, so I don't know if I'm in for this, but I'm just joking. How big do you think the campaign has to be for someone like Sega to listen? And do you think the latest restructure they just did again can hurt the game?
Honestly, I have no idea what the restructuring from this point on is going to do to the odds of actually getting Sonic 3 done.
Okay, and how big do you think the campaign has to be for Sega to like notice it, I guess?
Given my experience with what we've tried to do so far, I would say that it would probably take convincing them that they can do better than break even on doing it to actually get it out. So we would need enough people to pledge a purchase so that they would at least make up all of the development costs, which is actually pretty high. So the campaign assumes that the game is going to be $2.99 when it comes out, which I'm not really sure about. I mean, it could be $2.99, it could be like $5.99 since it's bigger. But if you assume $2.99, then you also assume each person who signs the petition, for example, is only going to buy the game once. Then you would need somewhere in the area of 100,000 signatures to guarantee breaking even. Okay,
so did Sega talk to you guys about I guess sales figures they were aiming for on the last two releases then?
Not so much.
Okay, and then my other question was it also in your contract to give away 1 and 2 to people that bought the older game that was emulated?
Yeah, that was how it was set up from the start. When they released it, it would replace the existing emulations, so anybody who had it would get it as a free update.
And I actually seen this being pushed around a lot in the forums, and I kind of had a couple questions about this, so I'll ask. People are always asking why is it mobile only, and I'm assuming it's because it's the biggest base of users, right? And Sega really likes mobile right now. Is that really the reason, or?
That's one reason, and as we came to find out later, we were talking about multiple platforms when we first started talking about Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, but that kind of dropped off after a while, and we just ended up with the mobile stuff. And one aspect of what kept it that way was something that we didn't realize until later. Very shortly before we signed the contract, Sega signed an exclusivity contract with Nintendo to give Nintendo 3 exclusive Sonic games, and what it said was that until Nintendo gets its 3 exclusive games, no other console is allowed to have another Sonic game on it, which I guess that excludes mobile. So we would have been disallowed under that contract to put the game on any other platform except for mobile, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That was actually one of the questions we had about the contract with Nintendo.
Yeah, I guess it's because Nintendo doesn't have any footing in the mobile industry, and it's seen as a different competitor than something like the Vita. It's interesting, though. I was going to say, too, I know the campaign is... They were 2 campaigns, correct? And they kind of came together. It's just something you're backing, just so people know. It's not something you started.
Oh, yeah, the letter campaign was started by, I think Big Smile started it in last year, shortly after we showed off the video. And it didn't really start moving very much until this year. And when people started taking up interest in it again, somebody suggested that they should do a petition also. So he added a petition to the campaign. So now there's the petition and the letter writing campaigns running concurrently.
Right, and I mean, it's been said that the layoffs could hurt the campaign, but I'm wondering if it could almost help it, just because I feel like there have been a lot of people working at Sega who've been there for years. They might have a negative stigma about talking about it. It could be that they bring in some new people in the next few months who are really looking for the next big thing to make their mark in the company. So I don't know, maybe people should keep their eyes on LinkedIn to see who the new folks in charge over in Sega of America will be once they move south. You never know. You might find a new person at Sega who might have their ear to the ground looking for new ideas for games.
I guess it's a possibility. I mean, after what we heard about Sonic Boom, it sounds like Sega America really, really wants to try and make a mark in some way or another. But the big problem is that we really have to deal with what's going on in Japan right now with Sega Japan. They're the ones who can make the final calls about this stuff, and they would be the ones who would need to be convinced to deal with any particular legal situation or anything like that. For a similar reason, we weren't able to get the lyrics for Sonic CD when that was released for PC and the consoles, and that was because they didn't have a license to the lyrics. So they had the melody, but they didn't have the lyrics, so we had to make a lyricless version of the music to use for that. And once that became popular, they decided, okay, we are going to get a license so we can release a full soundtrack. And then they released a Sonic CD soundtrack on iTunes, which actually did contain the Japanese music intact with lyrics. And it never went back and added it to the game, though.
That's interesting.
But yeah, I think that it was they didn't want to bother with it at the time or something. I mean, it sort of makes sense because they didn't know what was going to happen when they started working with us in the first place. So the less they had to put into it, the better, probably.
It's interesting you bring up. Well, I just wanted to ask too, based on you bringing up Sega of America and Sega of Japan. How much did each influence you, like maybe percentage-wise for the games? Would you say it was more of a Sega of Japan you were working with, or Sega of America, or going through Sega of America to get to Sega of Japan?
That was pretty much it. We went through a producer and some other people at Sega America to the proxy between us and Sega Japan. And actually Sonic Team specifically. And what really happened was they just talked to us to find out like where we were in the process and how that was going and stuff. And Sega Japan, they mostly just participated in doing their own level of QA, and then we had the regular QA department, which I think was based in Europe.
So really, it was all three regions were really working on the project, or working with you guys on the project. Were there any kind of lessons you learned in developing those two games with them? And were there some things you learned that could improve processes moving forward, maybe even with the new staff that Sega of America are bringing in?
I'm not real sure what they could do to improve the company, if that's what you're asking.
Maybe just, I guess I mean, like, in terms of how the communication structure is built, if you want to talk about that.
Well, it's pretty much like a big company that any other one that you would expect. They have various departments for different things. Sometimes they are all involved in something, yet there's still a disconnect there where they don't talk very much to each other, and they just sort of do their own thing, and that can cause a few problems sometimes. Like recently, the people had started getting takedown notices on YouTube videos, and that's because Sega Japan, I think, had recently registered with something called eLicense, and eLicense went on their own and started claiming videos, and Sega America, they had no idea about it until somebody mentioned it to them, and they had to go through legal and eLicense and get them to stop that.
Yeah, it's definitely not something new for the company. I know Tom Kalinske brought it up. I think George even mentioned it to me about a PlayStation 3 title that was never released.
I'm not going to get into this. It makes me angry.
It does.
It makes me so angry.
You think it makes...
It just makes me angry because it feels like one side of Sega is like, oh, I'm going to do this to benefit myself, and then the other side's like, oh, I guess we get fucked over. Like, it's just terrible. It's just like,
I mean, ideally, all sides would be working for the same common goals, and they would put any sort of personal sort of qualms out of it. But I have yet to see a business that operates that way. Unfortunately, but hey, like, I think the campaign, it's really surprising how much traction it's gotten. Do you think if at all, it was an impact of an effect of Sonic Boom, perhaps people seeing that, maybe being disinterested in it and wanting something else? I've seen there's been some news stories even where they're trying to make a parallel between the two. I don't know if it exists, but I was wondering, Stealth, what your thoughts were on that.
I don't really think it has a whole lot to do with Sonic Boom. I mean, definitely that had an impact on people who are fans of the franchise in general. But there are a lot of people who don't like what's been happening lately at all, and then there's even some people who kind of do, but they still like the classic stuff in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel there's like some sort of like, I don't know? It just seems to me like Sonic Team is like, they're very like, oh, let's try this and then let's try this. Like, they're always about, let's change it. Like, they're trying to do something new to capture maybe some sort of market, but like they never want to go back and try to do like a retro game. Like, even Sonic 4 didn't have the engine or anything. Is that like Sonic Team, I guess, in like always trying to move forward, I guess?
As far as Sonic 4 goes, that was actually developed to be a mobile game initially, and from what I've heard, it was somebody at Sega America says, I want a game called Sonic 4. So with this mobile game in development already, they just said, okay, we'll just call this one Sonic 4.
And then Sega Japan's like, yeah, we'll take that. That's pretty cool. Sounds good. And it's, I don't know, it just feels like it's kind of strange that they're like okay to use the retro franchise to like advertise or get the fans start talking. Like when they announced Sonic Runners, it was all retro franchise like footage, and then they showed the history, and then it's like Sonic Runners wasn't anything like the retro games. It's like, I don't know, it just feels like they know people want it, but they're not going to give it to them.
Yeah, that bugged me about it too. I mean, they didn't have anything about Sonic Runners whatsoever in the initial teaser, and it's like, hey, look at all these classic games. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
It's.
I mean, I'm not saying that Sonic Runners is a terrible, terrible game or anything. I've only played a few minutes, but it's like that's a weird way to advertise a game.
I think it's an ineffective way to advertise it. Yeah.
Yeah, they should have just gone with what they were doing with the game. I mean, the old classic games, aside from the fact that it's 2D and you're running from one side to the other and you can finally spin on hills and stuff again, it has nothing in common with the classic games.
It's very the art style is very new Sonic, but I don't know. It's just the way they market games, I guess. So I was going to ask, what was your guys' plan? Like, let's say you guys finished the retro titles. Is there anything you guys wanted to move on to? Other ports, maybe doing your own mobile Sonic title?
That was a really big one to get a brand new Sonic game.
Oh, that was one of your guys' pitch?
We hadn't made a pitch yet. I mean, well, there were a few minor pitches. One of them we had a short presentation for, and that one didn't really take. And there were at least two other ideas that we had that weren't as fleshed out, but we started trying to get talks to see if there was anything we could do. But those hadn't taken.
Did you guys? I was gonna ask. Oh, go on, Barry.
No, go on, George.
I was gonna say, did you guys ever pitch ports of, like, I know the retro engine, I don't know what type of games they could do, if it's just 2D or if it could handle polygons, but do you guys ever pitch doing a different game, like another outside the franchise of Sonic, or was it always like we're going to do the Sonic retro games and just Sonic right now, and there was never really plans after to do other ports?
Well, as far as your question about retro engine goes, it does do polygons. That's actually how the Sonic 2 special stage was done, but it's not really made for hardcore 3D or anything, which is why he's working on a new engine right now for a 3D game.
Okay. And and did you guys ever have talks about doing a game outside the Sonic franchise that it was owned by Sega?
That was in some of the earlier discussions. They were just trying to feel around and find out what might be possible for us in the future. I can't remember if there were any specifics that were mentioned, but they did ask if we would want to do any other ones in the future. This was our original producer with Sega America, who actually we lost in the restructuring.
Oh.
I was going to ask, just as a fan, what is your favorite non-Sonic Sega game?
Might take some thought. I've played Sonic a whole lot more than the others, but I have played some of the other Sega games, and mostly it's like the stuff that came from the arcade that's pretty good, like Space Harrier, Altered Beast, Shinobi.
Good picks. I mean, obviously you guys aren't remaking those, but those are definite good choices outside of the Sonic brand. I'll admit I didn't own any other non-Sonic Sega developed games until probably the late 90s. I was missing out, but still, I guess that says something about the power of the franchise. And speaking of the franchise, again, as a fan, what are your thoughts on the Boom spin-off franchise and its various aspects? I guess, do you feel like it warranted its own games, or do you feel that it should have just... I mean, we obviously know the quality of the games had they come out, but what were your thoughts on that when it was revealed?
When it first came out, I guess it seemed like there was potential to it. I didn't write it off quite yet, and I got to see some of it at E3, and they showed basically the best of the game, which you should expect. It was the best parts of the game, of the parts that they wanted to show off, which they said that they were showing off non-Sonic stuff just to show you that there is non-Sonic stuff in there, because you already know what Sonic plays like. And another thing I was told while I was there was that the game was almost finished, and that was at E3 months before it was released in November.
Yeah, I played a demo. I think the first demo I played was at Sonic Boom in New York, And they told me that too. They're like, oh, it's almost finished. But I remember looking at the camera during the speed sections, and it was so jerky. I think the camera throughout the entire game was very jerky, which was something I really wish they fixed. I mean, I don't think it would have fixed the game. I don't think it would have made it that much better, but it would have improved it a little bit.
Yeah, there were just a lot of problems with that game. Like when I actually got the final version, I was playing through it with my wife Liz, and within the first 15 minutes of the game, we ended up running into 3 progression stopping bugs that actually caused us to have to turn the game off and turn it back on and take wherever it put us for a restart point and try again.
I'd be fascinated to see what the development of that. I mean, I know right now it's a sore point for Sega and for Big Red Button, which is a shame because they canceled our interview the day after the game released.
Big Red Button did, yes.
Yeah, and we would have been nice. I mean, we're being nice to you, but unfortunately, I guess they were too afraid. Maybe we would ask the wrong questions, make them look bad. It's a shame.
Yeah, I guess that would be it. They would be deathly afraid of bad press.
Yeah.
So.
I've heard the studio was closed down. I don't know if there's any. Was that ever confirmed? That rumor?
I don't know about that. Have you heard anything?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it actually did get closed down, but that is what I heard also.
Well, just getting back to the Sonic 3, this campaign and everything, just to wrap things up, is there anything you want to tell everyone listening, how they can support the campaign, maybe things you don't want them to do that might hurt the releasing of the game?
Well, definitely right now is too soon to try and contact anybody at Sega directly like some people have tried. Like, I saw this one person who tried to push it onto Iizuka on Facebook. And he probably just skimmed right by it, or somebody who was reading his thing for him skimmed right by it or something. The person made a big deal about, oh, he's aware of this now because it said that it had been read, but all that meant was that it had been scrolled by. But what I don't like about that personally is that we really don't need to be trying to talk to anyone like Iizuka at this point, because the campaign hasn't gained enough traction just yet to make it something that can be taken seriously under the circumstances.
Mm-hmm. That's a good
point. And someone else tried to contact Mike Pollock and ask him to promote the campaign, to which he said no, he couldn't. Yeah, that is also not a good idea. You cannot ask anyone who is depending on Sega for a paycheck to do something like this, because it would appear to be pretty much contrary to Sega's own wishes, which would be why we need the campaign in the first place.
Right.
Yeah, and it's not like he was going to voice the game. I mean, there's no voices in that game. So it wasn't really going to benefit him. I mean, the game wouldn't benefit him directly.
I know he doesn't play games.
Yeah.
Mike told me.
So, he did tell you?
Yeah, well, he's like, I don't play games.
That guy pops up in the weirdest places. I'll have you having a conversation, he'll pop up, and he's like, hey, guys, like randomly. It's like, what do you
Yeah, that's doing? True. He's all over the internet. But no, those are great tips for people. I'd also suggest, too, that people keep the momentum up, but also be aware that there's so much turnover right now that I think for a lot of these Sega employees at America, hearing about a new game is the last thing on their mind right now. They're probably emptying out their desks. I know today is, I think today or tomorrow is Stephen Frost's last day.
Yeah, technically what we're aiming for is the Japanese branch, really,
because sure.
They're the big decision makers, and yeah, definitely there are probably a whole lot of people on the American branch that couldn't care less about any of this right now, since they're not going to be there much longer.
Yeah. Well, hey, Stealth, I just want to thank you so much for talking with us. George, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted if you wanted to add anything about where they could find the campaign and where they could sign the petition.
Oh, right. Yes. Well, we'll include the URL there in the description below. But if people want to visit the website, I believe it is sonic3remastered.com. And that's where you can find both campaigns, and you can also check out the really cool post that Stealth made on Sonic Retro that we cross-posted to SEGAbits. And he also has some really cool blog posts about the physics and also about just the development of the early look at Sonic 3 running on iOS. So,
I was going to ask, is there anything you guys were looking for, I guess, for the site for help? I think you guys were talking about translating to other languages.
Well, I'm not really directly involved in the campaign site, but they are looking for translations to other languages. Right now, I think they have Spanish. Somebody might have done a French translation so far, but I don't think that those translations have been actually spread very far in the Spanish and French-speaking areas.
Mm. Cool. Okay. Well, if you speak other languages, definitely get in touch with Sonic3Remastered.com. Hey, Stealth, thanks again so much for chatting with us about the games, about Sonic, and about your hopes for the future of the franchise. And also, thank you so much for the work you did on the Sonic 1 and 2 Remastered. I know a lot of people are looking ahead, but it's definitely great to look back to and play those games again because, in my opinion, they're the quintessential versions now out there. I hardly touch my cartridges, unfortunately, because I play them. So thank you so much for your work.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, this is Lisa Wilkerson. You might know me from Shamu or Crazy Taxi and also Virtual Fighter. And you're tuned into the SEGAbits Swingin Report Show.
And we're back. I just want to thank Stealth again for chatting with us. And now we're gonna discuss a little bit some news going on. Two very, very different games. One of them is ToeJam and Earl, Back in the Groove, which is a Kickstarter. And the other one we're going to talk about surprisingly released today. It was Sonic Runners from Sonic Team and Sega.
Soft release.
Soft release, yeah.
I don't know what that means, dude.
Yeah, let's talk about that soft release. I woke up this morning, I got all these notifications that the game came out. What was going on last night?
Okay, it was really confusing. Okay, I got on and everybody's like, Sonic Run, somebody, who was it? Some user just said, Sonic Runners is out, and they gave me a play link, and I'm like, oh, fuck yeah. And it's like not compatible with any of your phones. I'm like, well, that's fucking not right. So I looked up my phone, so if it was on a compatibility list, and it was. So I kept on tweeting and trying to see what everybody had the same issue. I obviously thought it was regional. It was not supposed to come out till the 26th, maybe. Then I guess I found the iTunes Japanese store, and it was on the iTunes Japanese store, and I was just researching and using Twitter. Yeah, a lot. And then finally somebody, I guess Sega posted it on their help forum at fucking 3 a.m. Or 2 a.m. that it's a soft release and it was only going to be released in Canada and I think Japan. So then my next thing was like I need to get the APK because the way that Android works is you could sideload apps from unknown sources.
Huh.
And it's only region blocked in the store, getting it through the store. So I went and got the APK. Somebody posted it online, and I updated the article. But yeah, technically not out worldwide. But you could play it if you make a Canadian iTunes account and if you have the APK for Android.
Yeah, I did the Canadian iTunes account method, and it was very, very easy. I was surprised.
Yeah, I don't even understand why there's just a Canadian iTunes account. I mean, market, but whatever.
Do they deserve their own iTunes? I don't think
so. They don't even deserve their own country.
So it's out. It's a soft launch. I remember Crazy Taxi City Rush had something similar. So we've both played it now.
Yes.
What was your opinion of the game before the soft launch and after playing it?
Okay, before it came out, I was a little confused, but I was a little optimistic. I mean, Sonic Team technically has been a lot better as a developer than they used to be, especially during the mid 2000s.
Right.
So I was optimistic, but I was still a little concerned. I mean, they've never done a worldwide, I guess, mobile game. I think they've done Japanese games.
True.
And we had Dash and we had Jump, so I was like, do we really need another Sonic mobile game? And now that I played it, I like it. I'm actually surprised at how enjoyable I found it. It has multiple paths. It has the physics are heavier, and I would say the speed is, I guess, more to my liking. There's something I don't like about Generations. It's that it feels too fast.
Right.
And this game is not that fast, but it's not slow either. It's like a nice balance.
Yeah, I'd almost compare it to Sonic Lost World in terms of the speed, because you get into it and you're thinking, oh god, it's going to be like boost mechanics in the what was that, the Rush games, but when in fact it's actually pretty slow moving, not super slow, but a manageable slow, I should say.
And it also has more platforming than Sonic Rush did, because Sonic Rush felt a lot of like, oh, just go really fucking fast.
Yeah, that's true. Also, people were afraid that, I know Iizuka did an interview, and it was kind of hard to understand what he was talking about when you translated it, but he made it sound like you tap on enemies to homing attack, which is not the case. There's no homing attacks in the game. It's you bounce into them and they get hurt. I know one of the complaints lodged against Shattered Crystal for 3DS was that only Sonic would be able to... Actually, none of them would be able to jump into a ball and hurt enemies, which kind of goes against the basic principle of Sonic. And thankfully here, all of the characters can jump in the air and bounce into enemies. I think Tails, when you jump in the air and make him fly, he's vulnerable, but that makes sense because that's how the games were too. I think... Didn't your tails, when they were spinning in the air, they might hurt enemies, but outside of that, you were vulnerable, I think.
I was thinking, what do you think? I was going to ask you, what do you thought about, what do you think it's more like? I thought it was like they're trying to like have a balance of like the new and the old. Like, it's 2D, obviously, it doesn't make it like the retro titles. I mean, the physics are different.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't move back and forth, but they added multiple paths, and the multiple paths are pretty interesting. I find it was, well, I think it was, it's a lot funner than a lot of their previous releases.
For sure. I mean, the stages themselves, if you were to look at them as a map, they would in no way resemble the classic games where you could see it moving up and down. You know, it's basically straight across. You dip down a little bit on the ground, you go up a bit in the air, but it's nowhere near the extremes that the classic titles or most of the 2D titles were. I do get a sense, I'm trying to figure out the structure of the game. I know you have episodic story chapters, but I feel like every single time you play the game I can't decide if it is being randomized or if it's just a collection of different stages that you randomly get. Have you noticed that? Because there's some that start off and it's like a line of rings, two of the same enemy, a dip down, a dip up, but then there's like another one where it's like a line of crystals. And I feel like there's maybe a handful of... I guess, what's your opinion on that?
I actually felt like I thought it was randomly what did he say?
Randomly generated.
Yeah, generated. Well, because when I was playing it, I don't know, it just felt like there wasn't set pieces, kind of like it's hard to say, but like when you play Sonic, the old ones, you kind of like, I don't know, there's a better flow to it. This one just felt like there was like, oh, you could jump this high and then get them on this ledge, and there was like, they just kind of like added these random elements with coins or crystals now, I think they're using too. They're using a lot of currency in this game. But
yeah, there's rings, crystals, red rings. Yeah.
Yeah. And it felt fine for what they're going for, because I mean, you're not going to explore it. So should they really go in and like spend so many times on like designing these levels?
That's true. Yeah.
And it kind of gives me I could compare it as a Sonic version of like, well, I guess it's a Sonic mobile game basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like not so much on the level, but the idea of collecting it, so you come back and you're addicted to see what you can collect next.
Right.
And the gameplay's fun enough.
I'd say I guess I'd say it's about time, if they were going to make an endless running Sonic, that they made it like this game is. Because you look at Dash, and Dash is a very well-made game. It looks nice, it plays nice, but it's really not a Sonic game. I mean, you're running forward. I guess I'd say the Dash games are almost like a really simplified Sonic Unleashed day stage, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas Sonic Jump, I mean, people get on that game negatively because they say it ripped off Doodle Jump, when in fact Sonic Jump, the original Sonic Jump, predates Doodle Jump by, I believe, a year.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So
I didn't even know that.
So I believe, I mean, jumping games are not new, but I think at the very least Sonic didn't rip off Doodle Jump. I don't know who they ripped off. Maybe they didn't rip anyone off. And Sonic Jump, the original one, I think is actually a very good game. But again, it's not a Sonic game. He has some Sonic moves, and there's the enemies and everything. But this is the first one to really take the kind of the core Sonic gameplay, I want to say, and make a pretty good endless runner.
Yeah, I would say yes. That's what do you think about the music?
I like it. I mean, I've heard some people saying it's kind of like that forgettable Sonic rock that you hear in some games, but I like that they made new music for the game. Not that we're hearing Seaside Hill or that we're hearing Sonic Lost World music reused, which is nice.
It's funny because when people say those forgettable songs, you mean the ones they don't use in every single game and they blare in your ear over and over again? Those?
Those. Yeah. No, I guess I've never been a fan of the soundtrack in Shadow the Hedgehog, for example. The ones where it's just like I like the
like a fucking robot and shit.
Yeah, like I like the ones where there's a tune that you can kind of pick out. Like for example, I think there was the in the piano on Sonic Lost World.
More melodic.
Yeah.
And that one had like a very nice upbeat rock, I guess you could say, because it was instrumental. I mean, rock and roll, I guess.
Yeah, like a happy candy rock.
Yeah.
So
it was good for what I heard. I haven't heard too much of it, but it was pretty good.
And the music changes up too. My one question is, am I able to go back and play the old stages? Because I know you progress through episodes, and I've played 10 episodes, which probably amounts to maybe playing that kind of forested stage 10 times, maybe 10 or 20 times. But after getting to episode 11, it changed to a new music, new graphics, Tails unlocked, which is really cool. But I wanted to go back and experience the old level again, and I don't know how I can do that.
I actually don't know either. I haven't played it you probably played more than I have, so if you haven't figured it out, I'm never going to figure it out.
Right, because I mean, I've played other iPhone games, like for example, I'm obsessed with The Simpsons Tapped Out, and there are levels and there are storylines that you can never go back and recreate unless you start all over again.
I'm thinking if it's a Sega Network thing. I don't know, because like I've been playing. My phone broke the other day randomly. Right. Yes, it's really bad that this game came out at this time. Yeah. It's just the screen. It works. It's just the screen. The panel doesn't turn on anymore. So we'll see about that. But I've been playing on their Chain Chronicles.
Okay.
And that game is like it's like I guess an RPG sort of, but it's like you unlock characters by playing it, and then the new characters have side missions with side stories. But I don't even know if you can go back on those either.
Right.
So maybe it's just like
for example, like for example in Sonic Jump, you can go back and play those different stages. Or in Sonic Dash, you always start off at the same part, and then you can always go to those new parts if you hit the right dash panels or springs. But in this one, I'm not getting the sense that I can go back and play those earlier stages unless you reach a certain point where the episodes are up and then you can go back. But that's my one concern, because one of the draws of a Sonic game is that you can jump around and play different stages. But this one, it feels like there's a forward progression, and I don't know if I can go back, which is kind of disappointing.
And so, okay, the game is free to play, so that means there's going to be microtransactions of some sorts, or some way they make cash.
Yeah.
Have you seen that yet, or is it just the game so far?
I've heard people complaining when they started the game up that they were getting hit really hard with suggestions to spend money, but I've actually...
I got hit with it.
Yeah, what I found is that actually the game, when it starts up, there's between like 6 or 7 messages that are like kind of in your mailbox system, and so it flashes them all up at you immediately. But after that, you don't see those anymore. And I'm kind of surprised by how accessible the game is without spending any money. It hasn't stopped me from playing yet. It hasn't, like for Crazy Taxi City Rush, it hasn't said, oh, you ran out of gas, you need to wait 15 minutes. Like, I could play and play and play. I feel like the rings there's a lot of rings they give you. I feel like the red rings, I've already amassed over 200, which kind of surprises me. Characters, there's no store for characters, so I'm not being asked to buy Knuckles or Tails. They just unlock as I play the game.
This seems to be like kind of a trend, at least for starting Sega Networks games, because I told you I was playing Chain Chronicles, and that one's like, I played like the first time like an hour and a half.
Right.
And then I was looking at my little like AP bar, whatever they call it, where you take points, and then once it's down, you have to wait a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
And I literally couldn't take it down enough, so like every single time I would take it down, it would be like 20 minutes refill. It would just refill itself by the time I got to it again.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how they make money.
Right now, I think it's a good thing for people who don't like in-app purchases, but I also think it's a bad thing for Sega because I don't see how they can make money on this game right now, at least in the current form.
I have a feeling, because I've heard that, I haven't played City Rush for like a long time, but I've heard that they literally, every update, they literally started making stuff more expensive and making the turns like cost more, I guess, and making you wait longer.
And videos.
So I'm assuming,
ads come up for other games too.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm assuming at first it's more of oh, come in, look how great it is, and then they slowly start like doing what people don't like. Yeah, I guess. In a way.
If they really want to get people's money, and again, talking about The Simpsons Tapped Out, they have, when they do premium items that you need to spend money for, they really kind of like go for the nostalgic retro classic Simpsons characters. So, for example, they'd be like, oh, you want you want this from this classic Simpsons episode, you're gonna have to pay for it, and people pay for it because they love the classics. And so it makes me wonder why Sega doesn't think about doing premium characters for this game, but have them be characters people have always wanted to play as,
Yeah, but we definitely don't know what their full plan for the game is. I'm assuming they have a plan.
For sure.
It's probably gonna be a long haul plan, and because I have a feeling this is gonna. I think Sonic Dash was downloaded over 65 million times. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming this is going to be a lot more. So I'm hoping they do. I mean, they have a big catalog of characters to pull from, especially when you count the Archie series and all those side things that nobody talks about.
Right. And I mean, I'm not asking for them to bring up like Mighty or Ray, like characters we haven't seen for over 20 years. But
why not? I mean, if there's a market for it, I think they should just do whatever. I mean, whatever. I think this might be one of those games that makes fans just happy that they have everything probably after a while.
That's true. I mean, they did do redesigns of the Freedom Fighters for the Archie comics. So can you imagine if they were like play as Princess Sally for the first time in a Sonic game? I mean, I know this is a Japanese game, but if Sega of America starts kind of trying to get ideas in there, who knows? I don't know.
Even if it's a Sega Japan game, they should I think they should embrace the whole legacy, even if it wasn't created in Japan. I mean, some of the best games from Sonic were created in America.
That's true.
Japanese staff, but.
And like you said, embracing the legacy, you already kind of see a bits of that there because the game has the sword from the Black Knight, which you'd never think would show up in a game again.
You would think that they would ignore that game existed, but I guess not.
And actually, speaking of the Black Knight, people have posted the credits for the game, and it looks like Sonic Team had heavy involvement, obviously. But for the most part, it's the names showing up are people who worked on the Mario and Sonic games, as well as the Sonic Colors, Sonic Lost World. So it looks to be coming from that side of Sonic Team, not so much the Unleashed and Generations side of the team.
Yeah, I think they did a good job. I mean, there's obviously limits. I never felt like I wasn't in control of the character. I've never felt like I don't know, the controls were like not having control over it was not making it fun.
Right.
I think they designed it correctly. That's pretty good.
Yeah, like there's no dash panels in the game. I've noticed in Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal, when you hit a dash panel, it just locks you out. You can't control yourself. You go through the automated loop. But with here, when you go down a hill, you go into the ball, but you can jump out of it. So that's nice. I know people hate having control taken away from them, and despite the game not giving you all the control that you usually get with Sonic, it's pretty decent amount of control for what it is. Plus, there's no homing attack. It's Sonic without a boost and without a homing attack, which is pretty amazing.
I have a feeling that the homing attack might be brought up later as like an add-on or something, or like a power-up, because you have those eggs you could get.
That's true.
Wheel.
Though the Wisps are in this. There's speaking of Lost World and Colors, it feels like this game makes a lot of references to those games as well as the storybook titles with the what is it, Caliburn?
Yeah.
Sword. So and Chip is in it from Unleashed, and the Chow are back, but there's no Chow Garden.
I think just like looking at this game, you're like, wow, Sonic Team has changed Sonic a lot. Like you have the Chip character where it was like when they had Unleashed and they had like an open world again, and it was like kind of like Pixar quality world, and then they have stuff from Colors, which had Wisp and was more I guess straight to action stages.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
I think if you're a fan of consistency amongst the games, it is nice to have those little kind of I guess bones thrown to the fans in this game, just to see a little more of a cohesive world where it's Sonic and the Black Knight character and the and Chip from Unleashed, and they're talking about the events that took place in Sonic Colors. So it's a nice bit of fan service, I guess. Let's talk about ToeJam Earl back in the groove. So this is one of the two co-creators of ToeJam Earl. It's Greg Johnson, and he has teamed up with a new group of people to make a fourth ToeJam Earl game. What do we know about this, George?
We know that it's going to be more like the first game. You probably know more than I do about the game. You're the one that covered it on the site, I think. Well, it's going to be a first game. I think the pitch is $400,000.
Mm-hmm.
And which I thought it was going to be a little bit too much, but then I guess not, because it's only been like 2 days and they already gathered a big chunk of that, like over $100,000.
Yeah, they're at 132 at the moment.
And honestly, if you guys actually like ToeJam Earl, or even want to see the game come back just because nostalgia,
mm-hmm.
They have really good. Actually, they're not gouging people for money. Basically, let's say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very reasonable. Probably, I thought it was going to be a lot maybe worse. I thought maybe those statues were going to cost a lot more than they actually do, because I've seen some Kickstarters that they really price their stuff a little high.
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks a lot of it is right now. It's proof. I don't know, proof of concept is the correct term, but very early, especially art. So.
Right.
They released a video with Greg talking about the game and about how this is like the first time they're going to be able to do what they want with ToeJam Earl without Sega making them change it.
More or less, yeah. They never said Sega by name, but they kept saying, "Be great not to have a publisher telling us what to do."
Which is basically Sega.
Yeah.
So let's be honest. But like, that's a good thing. I mean, I don't think Sega should have. Honestly, I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, I know they changed the first one from what it was like a roguelike game to a platformer, because that's the thing,
Yeah, and the second one was a platformer, and they do acknowledge the second one. They said they're going to take some ideas from it, but not too many. As for the third one,
which one?
ToeJam Earl 3. You know that one.
What's that? I never heard of it.
Yeah, right. I guess they didn't like that it was made an Xbox exclusive, meaning not many people played it. I know I didn't. I bought it after the fact. And the third one also was in full 3D, which meant you were moving the camera about constantly to figure out where you're going. I don't think behind the shoulder 3D view really worked for ToeJam and Earl.
No.
And so in this game, it looks like they're not being hindered by the hardware of the Sega Genesis. As great as the Genesis was, it definitely, I think, held them back at the time. So
yeah, especially for this type of game.
Right. So, this is a fourth game, but I really feel like it's almost like a remake of the first game. Probably.
Or maybe like a reboot, I guess.
A reboot is, a much better way to put it. What do you think about the graphics? Right now they have very realistic kind of 3D. I wouldn't say realistic, but they look like they're like a handmade model for the environments, whereas the characters are very clearly two-dimensional cutout characters.
They said they wanted to go 90s comic book feel, and that's the first thing I thought, like maybe like 90s Nickelodeon feel, like Nicktoons or whatever they called them back then.
Yeah.
Kind of like that style. That's what it reminded me of right away when I saw it. I was like, this is like Nickelodeon cartoons back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that was, I think that's what Nick was going for at the time too, was going 90s comic book look, I think. So it kind of all makes sense in the end. But honestly, personally, I'd rather have it all 2D, especially, and the floor. But they said that they didn't want to do it because I guess the way the camera and stuff, you get better angles on 3D. So I don't know. What do you think about the look?
I think it's unique. I think in a world where we have games like Little Big Planet, I think it's kind of along those lines where it looks like you're controlling paper cutouts on a little flat surface. I know there have been people saying, "Oh, you should cell shade it," but I think that would kind of ruin the mashup of the two different styles. I don't think their intention is to make it look like it's a flat two-dimensional game. I think the intention is to have the characters look like these cutouts on top of this surface.
I think the idea is like, oh, this is the old characters in like a new world. I was assuming, like, that's what I always got from it. Like,
yeah.
They're back in 3D, but they're 2D still. It's like kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, and like you said, the tiers are very very reasonable. For $15, you can get the digital copy of the game and be put into the thank you for the credits. So, right there is they've had over 1,000 backers, which is pretty impressive. There's also tiers that start adding goodies. I was surprised that for $25 you're already getting a keychain and a poster in addition to the game. That's pretty great. And then on top of that, for $40 you get a mug added to it. For $60, which is the tier I'm at the moment, and I say at the moment just because you never know what your bank account looks like in 29 days. But that includes the game, a keychain, 2 posters, a coffee mug, and early access, which I think is, $60 is the price of a retail title, and so that right there, that's the equivalent of getting like a special edition of a game.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's only $60, so that's like the base price of a normal video game, but special edition.
The only thing they could have done to make it even more appetizing was give you like a Genesis cartridge with the new artwork and stuff.
Right.
That and it just had, it was like the Genesis cartridge was like a USB really inside, and then you could load the game.
Right. Yeah, that would have been cool.
But that would have been probably too much manufacturing that.
Yeah. What do you think of, you talked about the vinyl figures. Those are definitely a high-end tier, but they look pretty cool. What did you think about those?
Yeah, they're pretty cool. It's always, I wonder if they're thinking about branding this and actually, taking and selling merchandise on the side. I'm assuming that's the plan in the end, selling these toys. Because, they look really high quality, or at least in the pictures.
Yeah.
And they even have box art, and it's attractive. It's like really nicely done.
Yeah, for a series that doesn't have toys, it would definitely appeal to just about anyone who likes the franchise.
I kind of wanted to ask him, but I guess I will do it later. But they literally taken out the third main character they added in the third game, right?
That's true, despite the fact that they talk about 4-player gameplay. So despite that, there's 2 characters they're showing here. They say you can play as up to 4 people, so maybe you'd have 2 recolors, I guess.
Yeah, they didn't really say. There's other characters they show on the little pricing tiers, so maybe like they have like a ToeJam. They have a ToeJam with like a rock guitar.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe they'll have like a disco version. And they have like a cat that's like dressed all weird. I don't know. These are actually little characters. And there's like a hippie girl.
Right.
With like a bra on.
Right.
With one eye.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure they're going to be using these for other characters, but it'd be interesting.
Mm-hmm. And just so people know too, that if they want any questions answered about this game, we'll actually, and I don't think it's a secret, we'll be interviewing Greg Johnson on the next episode.
Yes.
So get that out there. And so it's the year is young, and we've already got some interesting games, Sega related and not. Any final thoughts on the ToeJam Earl or Sonic Runner games?
No, that's it. I mean, if you guys want to support ToeJam Earl, go to Kickstarter and search ToeJam Earl Back in the Groove.
Yeah. So we'll see you next time on the show. Again, thanks for Stealth for talking with us. You can check out Sonic Runners if you have the skills to navigate the Canadian App Store or to download the game to your Android device. So check that out, and check out the ToeJam Earl Kickstarter. And I think that wraps up this episode.
And Sonic3Remastered.com if you want to support that.
Hell yes. The SEGAbits Swingin Report Show is a production of SEGAbits. SEGAbits is a fan site that is not in any way officially affiliated with Sega. Sonic the Hedgehog and all Sega-related trademarks are copyright Sega. All other featured trademarks are the property of their respective owners. Don't forget to check out SEGAbits.com, and you can find us on all major social networks. Just search SEGAbits.